Hey, how's it going, guys? Today I want to show you a little problem that you might find is pretty common with these Super Nintendos, and what I'm going to do to fix it. But if you look here on the back, focus in there, you see how those metal pins on the power jack are exposed there? It should look like this. Should have a centerpiece with a hole in it. Now basically all that is a guide to guide the center pin from the power cord to this contact here. You'll see there's another contact at the top here that goes to here. Let me show you with the power cord what I'm talking about. So on this power cord, on this jack, you have this outer ring, then you have this inner pin. All right. So when you plug this into the console, the outer ring, there's a contact in there on the side that goes to this first pin, and the center pin goes through that guide right there and makes contact with this pin here. And these are soldered to the motherboard of the Super Nintendo. Now, I ordered this online, and it is, I don't know, $4 or $5. But, as you can see here on the back, it is made by Hyperkin, and just like everything else I've ever purchased from Hyperkin, it is nothing more than a hyper piece of crap. It's worthless. It doesn't work. I took this Nintendo all the way apart, desoldered the power jack from its motherboard, soldered this one back on. You see there's, as you can see right there, there's two soldered connections there. And after getting this installed, it did not work. I wasn't getting power to the Super Nintendo. So I got my voltage meter out and I was testing it, and I wasn't getting power to the board with the power cord plugged in. So I unsoldered this power jack from the motherboard and hooked this power cord directly into this new power jack. So I had it hooked up like this, and then I put my voltage meter to those contacts and had nothing. For whatever reason, this center pin doesn't make contact when it goes through that guide to this contact here. It does not make contact for whatever reason. I've tried bending the pins so that would make better contact, and nothing. So this thing is total garbage. It does not work. It's trash. Now, as you can see, I resoldered the original one back onto the board of the Super Nintendo, and if I plug this in, you can see without that guide in the center, it is extremely loose and wobbly. Okay, so the power cord it could fall right out. But it does work, as you can see here at the power light. It does work. It's just that the power jack is extremely loose. Now, when I installed this, I had first thought maybe it was my solder connections, and I tested that out, and there was absolutely nothing wrong with my soldering work. There were good solder connections. That's why I took it off the motherboard to test it again. We're just plugging the power cord directly into it and testing on these contacts, and it was not my soldering job. As you can see, as you can tell, let me put this power cord back in. See, I resoldered the old one back to the board, as you can see, and you can see it's powering on. So there's nothing wrong with my my ability to solder that onto the board. I have good solder connections. That's proof right there. All right, so Hyperkin, your part is a piece of crap, hands down. So now, what I'm gonna do to fix this instead is I'm either going to hot glue this power cord into the jack. So what I would do is put hot glue around the edge of this plug so that holds it into the jack. Or option B, I take this back apart and I cut this power cable right here and cut the plug off, splice the wires, and then at that point solder the power cable directly to the motherboard. Either route I go, this will no longer be able, I will no longer be able to unplug the power cord from the console, which is okay, that's fine. I don't really need to be able to unplug the power cord from the console unless the cord goes out, and in that case I can either pry the hot glue right off, because as you know, hot glue will just pull right off, or I can just unsolder the wiring and wire a new one to it. So those are the two options I'm looking at right now in order to fix this problem. Whichever one I decide to go with will obviously prevent me from ever taking the power cord out of the console, which again, like I said, is fine, but it will be fixed and working. I might go with soldering the wires directly to the motherboard, and then just put some hot glue around that hole where the power cord comes out so the power cord is just not loose. And that way I can just bypass this jack altogether, and I won't have to worry about it being broke or loose, or worrying about hot glue breaking loose from this power plug going into the jack. But when I decide which route I'm gonna go, I'll come back and show you guys what I decided to do and how I decided to fix this, and show you how well it worked out or not. So we'll be back. All right, before I get started on this project, I'm not really gonna go through step by step how to take the Super Nintendo console apart. I'm gonna kind of get straight to fixing the problem, and I just wanted to show you guys what tools you will need for this project. Of course, you'll need a soldering iron, some solder, a hot glue gun, a Phillips head screwdriver, and this 4.5 security bit. Now this 4.5 security bit is what you will need to remove the screws on the Super Nintendo console in order to get it apart, because Nintendo uses these security screws. Let's see, I don't know if I can focus in on that there, but it's kind of a star shape and the head of it's kind of rounded. But these are the type of screws they use to hold the console together. They also use these type of screws to hold the game cartridges together. And for the game cartridges, you'll need one of these 3.8 security bits for a lot of the game cartridges. If you don't have these security bits, you can pick them up online pretty cheap. I think they're like $3 to $5 for a set of them. But you will need those if you're going to take apart any Nintendo console. So this is just showing you guys what kind of tools you'll need for this project. Like I said, I'm going to get right into this here and show you guys how I'm going to fix this problem that I'm having with this. So let's get started. So now I've got the motherboard for the Super Nintendo pulled back out. And here's that power jack, and these are the two pins. Now those 2 pins from the jack go through here and are soldered onto these 2 points here. Now, if I were to cut this plug off and wire it directly to the board, I would solder the wires directly to these 2 pins here, run the wire around the circuit board, and then probably out of this jack point there, and then fill that hole in with hot glue. Fill that hole in with hot glue so that way the cord's not loose and it stays in place. I would just have to figure out which wire is which in order to solder the right wires to the right contact on the board. So that's where I'm at now. Alright, now I've desoldered this from the board again. And from what I know, that center pin is your positive, and that outer end would be your negative. So, on here, that means this one would be positive, and this one's the other. And those connect up right here, so this means this solder connection will be positive and this one's not. Alright. So that's how I know which is which and which wire I'm going to solder to which connection on the board. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull these metal contacts out, and I'm going to run the wire through this hole and fill it full of hot glue to hold it in place. Alright, so now, based on how the jack connects to this motherboard, I've already determined that this one's positive and this one's negative. So now in the wiring, this is the power cord. I've cut the jack off, and I'm going to solder this power cord directly to the board. Now I'm doing that. The one with the white stripe is positive, and the solid black one without the stripe is negative. So this one will go to this one, all right, and this one will go to this one. So now I'm gonna solder this up. Now as you can see here, I added some extra solder to them contacts on the board, so it'll make it nice and easy to solder these wires. With this added solder on the board, now all I have to do is heat the solder and place these wires in place, and then make sure the soldering connections are good and solid, and we should be good to go from there. Now, as you can see, I've got them nice and soldered on. Good clean solder points, they're not bridged. Positive and negative. Directly to the board. Alright, so now you see the power cord goes in there. Comes through there, around the board, straight to those solder points. Okay. So now I'll just fill this in with hot glue so that it can't get yanked or wiggle around. And I might put a little bit of hot glue on the wires right there too to help keep these from getting yanked out and pulled off those solder points there. But that's how that's going to look. And that's going to bypass that jack So I don't even have to worry about that anymore. Not on this Super Nintendo anyway. Alright, as you can see, I put some hot glue on the wiring there. That is one way of fixing that problem with the broken jack. Just bypass the jack altogether. Cut the plug off, run it through there, bring it out around, solder the power cord directly to the motherboard. Use a little bit of hot glue to reinforce it and keep that cord from moving around, being loose, and it's not coming out. That's under solid. Now I'll put this thing back together. All right, so mistakes were made. I remembered to run the wire through this piece here before soldering it to the board and hot gluing it into place, but I forgot to run the wiring through the shell. So what I had to do is cut a little notch here so I can run the wire through the shell of the case. You can see here, it is just with this notch here, I can put this through here the way it should be. Alright, now I have it almost completely back together again, and I decided to add some more hot glue here on the cord to help further reinforce that so that cord can't get yanked out of there. And there's the slit I had to cut to get the cable into the shell. And as you can see on this side over here, I put some hot glue across there to reinforce that as well, so it's not loose and moving around. And you can see the hot glue here on this cable on the back side. Make sure you don't have it too far from the board, because it will it will get in the way of this post here, which will keep the board from falling into place where it should sit. So make sure the hot glue doesn't come past that circuit board too much there when gluing that wire to the board there. And let's see, plug this in. And now with that plugged in, you get the power light here, switch here, and you can see it's working. So now I'm going to finish putting this back together, and then we'll test this thing out. Alright, I've finished putting it back together. You can see this thing's had better days. Doesn't look too bad, considering. This console looks pretty rough anyway, but not too bad. And it's fixed and working, so. Power cord's in there nice and tight, it ain't coming out. Now it's time to hook this thing up, test it out. Alright, now I've got this thing hooked back up. It's hooked up to my TV, and I have a copy of Super Mario World here I'm going to try out. And here we go. And there it is. Now I do have another Super Nintendo. This one's actually my girlfriend's. She didn't have any of the cables or anything for it, and so I ordered some new cables. After ordering new cables, I found out the power jack was a little messed up, so that's why I wanted to fix this and get it running. I do have, like I said, another one up here, but I'm trying to avoid taking it out of the box to test games out that I buy. So that's why I wanted to get this one fixed here, so I can hook this one up, and any games that I buy for the Super Nintendo, I want to test them out. I can plug them into this one, test them out before throwing them into my collection. So I'm glad to see it's working again. Took a little time and work, but you know, all in all, it turned out pretty good. And like I said, this console's, it's seen some better days. It's pretty rough. So having this glob of hot glue back here doesn't really bother me too much. You know, it doesn't make it look any worse than it already is, right? But at least this way, you know, that power cord isn't coming out of there, and it's soldered directly to the motherboard, bypassing that jack, so I don't have to ever worry about that jack, at least on this console anymore. The only thing I have to worry about is if this power cord goes out, or something happens, this power cord gets chewed or cut, whatever, then of course I would have to cut this hot glue off, unsolder this cord from the motherboard, and you know, replace it with another one. But all in all, this turned out really good. Works great. And you know, the reason why I decided to solder the power cord directly to the motherboard of this Super Nintendo versus hot gluing the power cord to the jack is because it was already pretty loose. So with that, the plug on the power cord being that loose in the jack, I didn't want there to be any chance of it shorting out and causing any other problems. Of course, there is a fuse on the motherboard of this, and it's soldered to the board. So had I have hot glued the power cord to the jack in the back, with it still being loose, if that hot glue would have came loose and shorted out, it could have blown that fuse in there. Then I would have to take this thing apart again, unsolder that fuse, solder a new one on there, and I didn't want to take that chance. So wiring it directly to the motherboard was a good solution. Of course, I can't unplug the power cord from the system, but that's fine for what we're going to use it for, just to play around on, you know, so we have one that we can play and test game cartridges out on. And as you can see, it's working just fine. The cables I ordered for it were, of course, aftermarket. They're not Nintendo brand cords, they're just cheap replacement cables for $3 or $4, I think. Not bad. But as I said, I don't plan on taking this one back out of the box. You know, these are complete full sets with all the original packaging and everything that comes with them. So I really don't want to take these out of the box anymore. I want to try to avoid putting any more wear and tear on those consoles and cartridges. So I'm really happy with the result on this. And yeah, till next time, see you.